Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance. Beginning our video with a funny story that happened with an American family. Receive a hefty inheritance, blow it in 6 months, brother comes crawling to his sibling begging for money. Dad was a very hard-working man, and despite his faults, hey, we all have them, and if you believe otherwise, you're a GD liar. He managed to provide for a family of 6 with a roof over our heads, good food on the table, and the creature comforts that we all sometimes take for granted. When he and Mom passed, they left us 2 kids, entitled brother and myself, with a considerable sum, with the intention to give us a comfortable head start in life. It wasn't a staggering amount by today's standards, but definitely enough for a starter home for each of us. This was well before the housing crisis came to be. I was newly married and felt the best way to handle this newfound inheritance was to invest in a modest home free and clear, pay off all commercial debt. Thankfully, my husband and I are good that way and didn't have much consumer debt, and a vehicle to replace my little jalopy. There was even enough to put a down payment on a vehicle for hubby. Despite my parents being gone, I was in a good place, all things considered. I didn't care if I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. We were both working full-time and had a house fully paid for. EB received the same amount. He too decided to invest in a new home and a new used vehicle. Very smart use of his portion, or so I thought. About 6 months later, I received a disturbing phone call from EB saying he was broke and needed money. I was incredulous. He was also looking for a new place to live. What happened to his house? Then the bomb was dropped. He admitted he'd given up his house to foreclosure. Instead of buying his place outright, he instead placed a 10% down payment and decided to mortgage the rest. This tactic will work only if you don't mind losing a crap ton of money to interest, and if you intend to, make your mortgage payments. He had neither. After being notified by the bank about his sad state of affairs, he was given an incredible gift. Because EB was a new homeowner, the bank was willing to make a one-time concession. Pay 2 months of outstanding mortgage payments up front, and the rest would be tacked onto the amortization period. Seriously, that crap never happens. It was a gift from some unseen entity that clearly took pity on my brother. And you know what he said? Nah, take the house. Take the house! So he was able to sell the house for a $3,000 profit, then decided to rent some crappy apartment where he remains to this day. I don't know where his money went, and it's really none of my business, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious. So you're probably asking where the entitlement comes in. EB, I'm short rent. Me, oh, this again? This is serious. We're going to be evicted if I can't come up with rent by the end of the week. Sister-in-law screeching in the background, she owes us money! I should backtrack a bit. When the estate was settled, I petitioned for a small portion of EB's share, about $10,000, to cover the following items, among other things. Cleaning out the family home, including performing repairs to prepare the house for sale, arranging for both funeral services since EB went AWOL, my paying for both grave markers out of pocket since EB refused to pitch in for what Dad's policy couldn't cover, my paying for legal fees in relation to the execution of both wills and settling the estate. I should note that EB, in a moment of clarity, agreed to this arrangement without hesitation, even though I made it very clear that he was under no obligation. I thought that'd be the end of it. Sister-in-law wouldn't have it. She accused me of stealing from EB his rightful share, and that I had such nerve to be so selfish to demand money from him when it was totally undeserved. This coming from the same woman who paraded through my parents' home on the day of Mom's funeral, pointing out crap she wanted. I jokingly bet my husband that EB'd go through his inheritance within a year, while hubby said 6 months. I still owe him a fancy steak dinner since I lost the bet. Anyway, back to the rent story. All I could do was tell EB that I simply couldn't afford to pay his rent since I had tuition to pay for, and that my husband can't stand him, but I didn't tell him that. Sister-in-law will make a sniping comment now and then about how well off we are at the expense. She still claims that their financial downfall is somehow my fault as opposed to their atrocious money handling skills. The most important thing is they got kicked out. But I'm still dumbfounded and appalled at how this whole crap storm played out. And our second story. Look, Karen, I made a friend. A few years ago, I was meeting 2 friends at the county fair. I was running late due to traffic. The fair's a pretty big deal around here, so I told them to go ahead without me. When I finally got there, I went to the ticket booth to buy a ride pass. For $10, you could get a wristband allowing you unlimited rides. This was a much better deal than getting single ride tickets, which cost $1 each. Except this year, something was strange. Usually you could just buy one wristband, no problem. But for some reason, the only way to buy them this year was to get two at once. Now, obviously, my two friends had bought their wristbands together, so I didn't have a second person to buy one with. I went up to the ticket taker, who looked a lot like a stereotypical entitled person, the short blonde bob, oversized sunglasses on top of her forehead, the rolls of fat hanging out of the red vest all the fair workers were wearing. She looked at me and said in the most annoyed voice, "Can I help you?" Yes, I wanted to buy a ride pass, but I don't have a second person to buy it with. Could I just have one wristband? What are you telling me, you have no friends? Did you seriously come to the fair alone? I didn't come alone, it's just my friends already bought wristbands. That's it? You don't have a sibling, cousin, parent, anything? I find that hard to believe. Yeah, of course I do. They're just not here. And you only have two friends? Maybe if you had more, it wouldn't be a problem. Now, go off and make a friend, and then you can come back and get a pass. Her attitude really annoyed me, just about as much as this ridiculous new rule. Like if they could sell you two passes, then what made the problem with selling one? I get most people don't go to the fair alone, but what if there was an odd amount of people? I really didn't want this annoying ticket taker to have her way, so I did just what she said and decided to make a friend. Standing behind me in the ticket line was a pregnant mom and her daughter, about 8 or 9. I was assuming the mom wasn't going to be riding any rides, and they seemed to be giving in and just getting single ride tickets. That's when I got an idea. I pulled the little girl aside and asked her if she'd like to get a ride pass. She said yes, and I got back in line with them. "Did you make a friend yet?" asked the annoyed ticket taker. "I actually did. Me and my new friend here'd like to buy a ride pass," I said, smirking. The ticket taker stuttered and tried talking back, but there was nothing she could do. The rules stated that the pass had to be bought by two people. It never said that they had to be together or even know each other. The mom and me each paid $10 and took our wristbands. The daughter thanked me, and we parted ways. I went to go catch up with my friends, and we spent the rest of the day at the fair. I went back to the fair the next day, but this time with my twin sisters, where I discovered a new rule. The passes only lasted one day, and new ones had to be purchased every day of the fair. This was annoying, but there was nothing I could do. Of course, there was the same angry, overweight ticket taker that was there yesterday. My sisters bought their passes together, and I decided to do the same thing I did the previous day, just to spite her. I turned to the person behind me and offered to buy our passes together, since he was in a group of 3 people. He said yes, and we went up to the ticket booth. "Me and my new friend here'd like to buy a ride pass," I said while looking at her with a big grin. Even more annoyed than last time, she took each of our 10s and gave us wristbands. Of course, she purposely ripped mine while tearing apart the sheet of bracelets, but it was still so satisfying to beat her at her own game. The next year, the single-person ride passes were back because of complaints from people, including me. Turns out the fair was just trying to make more money by forcing more people to buy the more expensive single ride tickets. Their plan didn't work because I'd found a simple loophole that was used by other people as well. They still had passes for 2 people at a discount, so for my benefit and theirs, I'd always find a stranger and go to the booth where that annoying lady was. She'd always be absolutely PO'd as I said, "Look, here's my new friend. We'd like a ride pass." Lady orders me to let her out of a no parking zone. I have a highly specific job that usually sends me to construction sites where somebody not knowing what I do would say, "I just watch the digger load trucks." Of course, it's more complicated than that, but it's not important for the story. My company is usually hired by the owner of the site, not the company, which is actually building there. Because of this, I only have to work with the workers there, but I'm not required to do something else. So, on to the story. I was sent to a construction site in the city with a very few parking spaces nearby. Because of this, the company building there had a deal with the city to declare space alongside the road, usually used for parking, to a no parking zone to be able to store some of their stuff, and had set up signs to make this clear. It was summer at the time and pretty hot. The operator of the digger and I were the only people on site through lunchtime when some lady shouted at me to come to the entrance of the construction site. I had set myself up in pretty much the only piece of shade on the whole site and really wasn't in the mood to leave that spot. So I shouted back at her to tell me what she wants. Turns out she had parked in the no parking zone and hadn't noticed that the workers had set up a movable fence to surround that zone to be able to store their tools there without getting stolen right away. So her car, a Porsche, was almost boxed in as 2/3 of her vehicle was in the no parking zone. She's still shouting at me. After seeing what's going on, I get interested and move on. I get to her, covered in dust, taking my time, moving up to her. She was in her 40s maybe, wore high heels and a nice dress, typical businesswoman. The whole time she was shouting to me to speed up and move faster. She was in a hurry. So finally, I'm in front of her. Lady, finally, that took you ages. Now move that damn fence so I can pull out of there. Why would you even box me in? I turn around slowly and look at her car. It would have been easy for me, or even for herself, to move the fence and let her out, but she wasn't very nice, and I wasn't obliged to help her. Me. Sorry, won't do that. Lady. What? Why would you say that? Let me out. Not nice word. Me. I don't work here. I said that standing in front of her, covered in dust, wearing my high visibility vest and my hard hat. Left her speechless for a moment, then all hell broke loose. I was lying. She would get me fired. She would call the police because this was theft. She knew the mayor and all sorts of other things. I just stood there, pretty amused on the inside, just like the operator and his digger who was laughing so loud I could almost hear him over her screeching. While it was amusing to see her go off at this point, I was a bit PO'd too, because I could only imagine how this entitled brat was speaking to people she actually had power over. While she was in her tirade, 2 policemen turned the corner. She must have noticed the grin on my face because she abruptly turned around and saw the 2 approaching her. Lady, finally, someone who can help me. Tell this, another not nice word, to move the fence so I can pull out. The 2 policemen looked at her and then at her car. Finally at me. One of them walked to the vehicle and the other approached me. PM, what's going on here? Me. She ordered me to let her out of the no parking zone, but I don't work for building company's name. I pointed to the big signs where the well-known building company advertised itself to my name tag. I wear one in my high-visibility vest with my company's name on it. The policeman understood pretty fast. These no parking zones are pretty common in the city. He walked over to his colleague, who was the target of the woman now, and said a few words to him. He pulled out a little book and began writing a ticket. Only then did it dawn on the lady that she was in trouble. She still kept shouting that she did nothing wrong because she was boxed in and wouldn't be in the no parking zone if I would have let her pull away. PM, he doesn't work here, and you're parking in a no parking zone. Here's your ticket. He handed her the ticket and moved the fence to let her out. She was standing there a few seconds with the ticket in hand, speechless, then got in her car, gave me the stink eye, and went off. I tipped my hard hat when the 2 policemen continued their walk and went back to tell the operator of the digger what happened. Had a good laugh after all. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.